Welcome back to episode 4 of the Hacking Arcade ROMs Ninja Gaiden Free Play Edition. In the first 3 lessons, we talked about just looking generally at the Ninja Gaiden MAME driver, figuring out what the RAM and ROM address ranges are. In lesson 2, we've talked about understanding the ROMs and how they're laid out in the separate files and how to merge them. And then in lesson 3, we talked about how to split them. So if you haven't watched these other lessons, you really should. Lesson 1's not that important if you already know the concepts, but lesson 2 and 3 are very specific to Ninja Gaiden, so you should watch those. So I'm already in my MAME directory, and from last time I showed you if we're going to edit things, we're going to have to actually take the original ROMs and merge them into a big ROM file that contains all the ROMs in the proper ordering. And then we're going to make our edits in there, and then we're going to actually have to split it back out to their component files, Gaiden 1.3s and Gaiden 2.4s. So the first thing we have to do is we have to figure out how the system handles it if the ROMs are corrupt, or if the system doesn't think the ROMs are the same as they're programmed into. Most games have some type of check to make sure that the code that's in the game that's being played is the code that was originally produced. They have what's called a checksum. And some games, some really old games don't have any checksums, and they'll just try to execute whatever. Most games at least will notify you if a ROM is bad, has changed, and it will notify you that it's bad. Some games will actually just stop execution altogether. They won't let you continue. So we have to figure out how Ninja Gaiden handles this. So let's take our Gaiden merged bin file, and we're just going to look for anything that we know is probably not game code, something like something like that might be output to the screen, like copyright, Ninja Gaiden, Tecmo, anything that's just going to be the actual like credits or text. So I'm just going to scroll down, and already I see something here. We see copyright 1988. That's clearly not game code. So altering this should not actually mess up the execution of the program. And this is important. The reason we do this on stuff that's like this, something like words, is because if we took some bytes and we messed it up, it actually might, depending on what bytes we hit, might actually stop the successful execution because we're actually altering game code. Here we're not actually altering game code. I mean, technically it's game code, but it's not stuff that's actually CPU and instructions. It's just data that's going to be printed to the screen. So we're going to edit. Normally you only have to edit 1 byte, but remember Ninja Gaiden is split up into 2 ROMs, and I just want to make sure both ROMs have some change. So all I have to do is edit 2 bytes that are next to each other. So I'm going to take that C, make it lowercase, and make that O uppercase. I'm going to save the file. Then I got to run that program that takes this merged file and splits them back. So I'm going to go into the ROMs directory, so the Gaiden directory, and I'm going to run my program that I talked about in lesson 3, Gaiden split. Okay, and that should have changed them. And now I'm going to simply run MAME64 debug and Gaiden. And I should immediately, and I do, get these errors. The checksums are wrong. That's good because the MAME program is checking them and making sure that the ROMs are what they expect. And MAME is telling you, hey, these ROMs are wrong. So that's actually good. We want that. Because otherwise, if it didn't, that means that something happened wrong and we never actually changed our settings. Our changes didn't take effect. So now we'll go over here and see how this Gaiden system handles it. And so I'm just going to hit F5 in here to start it up and watch what happens. And what's happening right now, I'm going to hit F7 here, is you can't hear it, but it's actually making sirens. Really loud noises. It sounds like a police siren. And you can see it says program ROM 0 error, program ROM 1 error, and it's making noises. I'm going to continue putting it back to running. And what is going to happen, though, luckily, is the game's actually going to continue executing. Once it makes the noise and shows us that there's an error, it's going to still run. So that's great because that means we don't actually have to do anything to to get the game code to run while we are making our changes. In the Akari Warriors hack that I did a couple years ago, probably 7 years ago, the moment you change a byte, the game won't run. So then you have to figure out how to get around it so you can make your changes in the first place. This is great. We don't have to actually do any changes to get the game code to run. We can just directly change our code and it should run as long as it's valid code. When the game is once we're done and we know everything works correctly, what we will do is figure out how it actually computes those checksums and then re-encode our values so that the checksums actually pass. All right, that's it for today. I will see you in lesson 5. Again, if you like this, please hit the like button and tell your friends who might be interested in this and about it. Thanks a lot.